see. He's Good morning. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. Morning, Chairman Powell. Well, I'm delighted to see all of you. And I will say, as part of an introduction, that I had a number of people contact me early on about this meeting and say, why in the world is public safety for the House of Representatives and the MARTOC committee meeting at the same time? And we are here because we want to emphasize the importance of leveraging technology in our climate of a challenging workforce, the importance of using technology to solve a lot of our problems. So we are going to have this meeting is going to be bifurcated. We are going to start with Chairman Collins, who's chairman of the Public Safety Committee in the House, and he is going to review House Bill 348 and the proposed amendments to that. We are not going to take amendments to that bill today. We're going to wait for session on that, but we do want to walk through that and kind of be able to see the improvements that they're making in that bill, so that hopefully we can add those because MARTA will be bringing legislation this session to ask for cameras to enforce their new bus rapid transit lanes. And we're going to have a presentation by no less than the CEO, Collie Greenwood, about the importance of BRT. And so that is kind of how the meeting is going to run. If we could start, please, with a word of prayer from Representative Vance. If everybody can bow your heads.
Thank you for this day. Thank you for this meeting where we try to make things better for the public safety in the state of Georgia. Thank you for these members that are attending here today and online. Thank you for these participants who come to share their wisdom with us so that we might make a better informed decision. We ask all these wishes in God's name. Amen.
Thank you, Representative. So everybody that is joining us this morning, we do have a number of handouts in front of you, but I do want you to turn to, everybody should have a copy of House Bill 348, and we're going to turn it over immediately to Chairman Collins to walk us through that bill.
Thank you, Chair Lady Silcox, for having the Public Safety Committee come with your committee this morning. I have often said that the Public Safety Committee, in which I chair, is a committee that's made up of a very diverse group of House members who have a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge with regards to the affairs of public safety in the People's House. And I'm very proud to have a lot of those members here with us. And also, I believe there are some online. And so I just want to thank you for this invitation, a way to further the committee's affairs. House Bill 348 started out as a cleanup bill with our school automatic traffic enforcement safety devices, or what we call as the school speeding zone cameras. That piece of legislation, I think, was a very important piece of legislation when it was passed several years ago, because it deals with speeding in school zones. having a child that just finished up elementary school, transitioned into middle school, if you ever go through any car rider line or drop off line at an elementary school, besides questioning the reason why you have children to begin with, it can be a very hectic time in your child's life, and in the course of your day, it's probably one of the most hectic times because you're getting things ready, you're getting ready to drop your child off, you're making sure that your child has a lunch box, has a book bag. You're watching the car in front of you. You're watching the staff from the school tell you to pull up or stop. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure and protect this program that's been put in place, because it's very important that we make sure and slow down cars during those hours of pick up and drop off for our schools. I think the program has received a lot of bad publicity, and rightfully so, because throughout the state, we have some jurisdictions that are not necessarily using it within the spirit of the law and the intent of the legislation. I've been approached by numerous members over the course of the last 2 years in trying to clean this bill up, who just do not have any desire to see these cameras being used at all. I think that would be a terrible mistake, because as time marches on, we have seen that technology can help us improve our quality of life in many ways. Now, in some ways, it has digressed us as a society, but I think overall, this electronic form of monitoring can be a tool for public safety. So as we move the bill forward, I can say that I tried to reach out to a lot of different members, hear some concerns. Unfortunately, during the legislative process, you can't please everyone. I wish I could, but that's just the way that it is. So there's been a good bit of compromise on this bill. So I wanted to just point out a few things that were important to me in the bill. And if you'll see what you have here, you have a Senate substitute to House Bill HB 348. Now, as part of the legislative process, we send over what we want to the Senate, and they mess it up and send it back to us. And then there's some compromise. So this bill kind of got hung up in the Senate last year, and hopefully we'll be able to make some much needed changes and some things that will be good. But one of the big issues that I have heard throughout the state from people on both sides of the aisle, whether you're in a rural community that utilizes these cameras, or whether you're in a suburban community with a high population, would be the times that these cameras are allowed to operate. Right now, in some communities, you have these cameras that are issuing speeding tickets or speeding citations rather at 10 o'clock at night, at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm told that that is just an oversight, but it continues to be overlooked. So we wanted to put some things into the code and codify the exact times that these cameras can be utilized. And if you'll see on lines 121 through 126, we're talking about 60 minutes prior to and 30 minutes after the official start time, and 30 minutes prior to and 60 minutes after the official dismissal time, where the speeding has to be 10 miles per hour over the limit. I think that would do a lot to bring some clarity and transparency to the legislation. Throughout the bill, there were a couple of other things that I wanted to see changed, and I believe those got axed over in the Senate. But one of the main issues I wanted to make sure, in an effort to be more transparent, would be that the cameras couldn't be utilized unless they were flashing warning lights at that particular zone. That seemed to me to be a very good compromise, and just something that would alert the general public that not only would there need to be a zone assigned marked, placing that as a school zone, but also have the lights flashing. I thought that was very, very important. Again, this bill has changed significantly, I believe, since it left our hands over in the House. And I wanted to point to one more piece of the legislation as we had it amended And I'd be remiss if I didn't call on Miss Jenna Dole, our legislative counsel. She has lived and breathed the different drafts for this bill over the last 2 years. I think it was redrafted about 12 times last year, trying to make folks happy and make some changes. Jenna, can you remind me exactly where we put in this bill with regards to the court date and having a court date assigned to the violation? Is that towards the back? Okay. This was another issue that I believe has been brought to the committee and to actually it was to the Motor Vehicles Committee is where this bill was assigned. But on 177 through 179, you'll see that there is a hearing date assigned to the citation. Currently, that is not what is in code. You receive a civil monetary penalty in the mail with your tag number, the date you receive the civil monetary penalty violation, but yet there's no court date. So a lot of people are confused, and you have to go dig and research and hunt what venue you have to oppose or to appeal this the civil monetary penalty. So what I thought would be good is to just treat it like a citation that you would be given by a peace officer if you were to violate the law. It would have a court date. So then the burden is not on the person who received the citation to go and to find out what venue that they have where they can be heard and they can contest the citation or the civil monetary penalty rather. So that was one piece of the legislation that I was very adamantly supportive, was that the fact that you can make this a more clear and transparent process. Right now, that does not seem to be the issue. So with that, those are the main changes that I was really working towards in trying to clean up this piece of legislation. And again, I certainly do not want to see this program go away, because it is a tool that law enforcement in various communities around the state are utilizing. And we have seen at a time when we need peace officers to be patrolling our streets, to make our communities safer. They respond to a lot of calls. This is a way that we can slow down that traffic in school zones and free up law enforcement to do other things, more important things. I know there are several people here that maybe help co-sponsor this bill. And Madam Chair, I'd like for you to recognize any of them if they have any input and comments at this time.
I would be glad to. Are there any comments? None? All right.
And I would like to say one more.
Sure. Be my guest. You're 21. There we go.
And again, I just want to thank our legislative counsel, Ms. Jenna Dole. She worked very hard on this the last 2 years to the point of every time I'd walk into her office, what's got to be changed now? So we became real good friends and pals during the last 2 years. And I'm just very appreciative of the expertise that she brought to this bill and a lot of other public safety bills also.
Well, Chairman Collins, thank you so much for that. And I really appreciate you coming today. And I agree with you. I think that it's really important that we use technology to leverage our law enforcement resources because they are limited. And we have limited numbers of policemen. We don't have complete police forces in any of the metro area. And so I agree with you. And I hope I can help you pass this legislation and get this passed this year through the Senate because I think we need it.
Thank you. And there's a fine line there in making sure that we utilize technology, but we don't use it in a way that demonizes public safety and puts it in a bad light. I know there's a revenue aspect, and there's a lot of money being made on this. And I've got an old saying that I don't mind people making money off of something like this, but at the end of the day, it's about public safety. And there's a fine line there, and there's a threshold to where it's more about finances than it is public safety, and we need to make sure and tone that down. and keep it about public safety.
No, I appreciate that very much. Well, without further ado, I want to bring your attention to all these copies of letters that we have at your desks. Some very important organizations, including the North Fulton Chamber, the Gwinnett Chamber, the Clayton Chamber, and the Council for Quality Growth have all written letters to say that they are in favor of the BRT legislation that's going to be proposed. And we did receive word also from Commissioner Cupid in Cobb County on late notice, and we were not able to get that out to y'all, but we do have that letter as well. So I think we have a lot of Metro support. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce CEO Kelly Greenwood, who's going to give us a presentation on the importance of BRT. You got a mic? There we go. Have you got it?
All right. I think that's better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Silcox, and thank you, members of the MARTOC committee, for spending the time and energy in what is the off season, frankly, making sure that we are aligned and taking a good look at how we can help launch this very important mode of transportation in the region. Bus rapid transit is successful at MARTA, and it will be successful if we work together and make sure that it's got all the supports required to launch properly. That first line on Summerhill is going to be open 2025, so it's just around the corner. But before I get started, I just want to introduce some of the MARTA team members that are here. I like to call them the Magnificent Seven. We've got Board Member Rod Frierson. We've got Valencia Williamson. We've got Jennifer LaRosa, Colleen Kiernan, Willie Davenport, Payson Schwinn, Amanda Jackson, and Michael Rafshun, I believe, has joined us in the building. So, no shortage of supporters here. These are the folks that have helped me think through this over the past few weeks to make sure that we bring this message to you clearly. The purpose of the presentation is to reinforce the benefits of bus rapid transit throughout our region. And we want to share why BRT is the transit system that Georgia should embrace. We'll provide some hard data on the economic benefits of BRT. And we're also going to discuss a fair and convenient means of enforcing and regulating the BRT lanes. After this presentation, I think there are a number of entities here to support this effort. Chair Silcox spoke of some of them, and we may be fortunate enough to hear from some of them as well. So I invite you to listen to their messaging as well as mine. And I want to start with what is bus rapid transit. And really, the screen is a good pictorial representation, but briefly, it's we like to brand it as a train on rubber tires. So think about a train and now think of it on rubber wheels, and then you're starting to get a sense of what we envision for bus rapid transit. Characteristics including a dedicated operating lane, transit signal priority, high frequency service vehicles, level boarding and off-board payments so that people are not queued up at the front of the bus trying to get on, and that slows that whole progression of service. Enhanced stations with information screens, communications, shelters, benches, and electric buses with doors on both sides, and charging stations and interior bike racks so that people are getting on and moving as soon as possible. And something that rail can't give you, which is flexibility. So you imagine when there's a vehicle parked foul of rail, or an accident or a disablement, and all the rail vehicles just kind of line up right next to each other because they can't go any further beyond the first one. But that's not happening with bus rapid transit. The flexibility of this mode is that the vehicles just go around the impediment, whatever it is, and keep people moving. It won't give you the noise and vibration. We've got an electric vehicle. It's quiet, it's clean. It won't give you noise and vibration of a diesel bus or a rail vehicle for that matter. Street repairs and special track work associated with rail, not evident with BRT, and even power supply interruptions, again, not a factor. It doesn't even require the additional workforce to inspect, clear, and repair street rail networks, and it doesn't have the expense of a heavy rail system. So this slide talks to you about, the second bullet talks about the $20 million per mile versus $350 million per mile for heavy rail. And you see right away, It's a way of getting the rail-like benefits for travel for people in the region without the rail-like expenses. You'll also find that it's being embraced by local jurisdictions within MARTA, and with Cobb and Gwinnett, they're adopting BRT as part of their transit plans, given its success in other regions. Georgia's catching up to Sunbelt cities on bus rapid transit like Phoenix, Austin, Houston, Salt Lake City, and other southern cities, including Orlando, Jacksonville, Charleston, Richmond, and even Birmingham, Alabama. And why are they all doing this? The cost is one thing, the short implementation time is another, limited construction impacts, and the connectivity that BRT brings as a premium mode of transit throughout the region. We believe that when you have a system that people see as valuable and it can save them time, they'll actually hop on it. More people on the system, less people driving cars on the roads. And it's got the flexibility to adjust routes in the future and actually meet people where they are and where they're going. It's not the kind of thing that you put the system in and then you have to forget it. This is semi-permanent so that it can change with the needs of our ridership. And of course, the economic opportunities along the corridor. So some of those economic opportunities bear repeating, because it's not just about taking people where they want to go today and tomorrow. We take our mission of advancing prosperity in the region very seriously, and this is just one way to showcase that initiative. So some of the economic successes here are clearly listed on the slide. So they're 33%, fully 33% of sorry, I just lost my spot there. Sorry, yeah. BRT corridors are linked with 1/3 increase in new commercial space. So you've seen that study that's there in Spokane Regional. There's employment centers near the BRT stations linked with gaining employment, and that's in Eugene, Oregon, and income positively correlated to BRT development. That's out of Pittsburgh. But closer to home, just last week, a high-level spokesperson for the Perimeter CID made it crystal clear to us at MARTA that the big business leaders in the area like Cox, Mercedes-Benz, Home Depot, State Farm, and places like that are huge proponents of the economic benefits that MARTA offers to their enterprises. They know that providing employees with a solid and dependable means of transportation to and from work is a game changer in business. So when it comes to workforce access, this is where I was going, 36% of transit users were working in essential industries. We did that study during the COVID shutdown, and we recognized that the people that were going to work, people that were making things better for all of us, whether they worked in retail, in pharmaceuticals, in healthcare, they were using transit to get to work, 36% of those riders. So that means that it's good for all of us, whether we ever step foot on a transit vehicle or not. The people that keep us moving are using transit. So a really strong advocacy for transit in the region. With MARTA's new Summer Hill service, we expect a significant increase in ridership. So the ARC model expects about 4,450 boardings per weekday. And that was a pre-COVID estimate. So, you know, pre-COVID was a lot better than post-COVID. We're about 68 to 70% of pre-COVID ridership these days, but that continues to increase. And so I have no doubt in my mind that one day we will get back to that and surpass it. But in the meantime, the bottom line is the vast majority of boardings will be a huge increase on the Summer Hill line over the previous. The 55 route currently has about 1,100 daily riders. So the BRT will bring a huge increase to that. You can see on the left side there, the State Route 54 in Clayton County includes a stop at Delta's headquarters, which is Georgia's 4th largest employer. And on the far right side, another major employer, the Southern Regional Medical Center, will be served by the South Lake BRT. And we're looking at how to connect that BRT route directly with the Atlanta airport. Again, another game changer. So if connecting employers to workforce isn't enough, APTA, the American Public Transit Association, has found that 50,000 jobs, direct and indirect, are created for every $1 billion invested in transit. 50,000 jobs for every $1 billion invested in transit. The increase in property values in BRT corridors are combined with increased connectivity and economic development makes BRT corridors the perfect areas for transit-oriented development. So we are increasing the value, we are increasing the economic development in the space, and so it only makes sense that we, MARTA, insist on economic development and transit-oriented development for more affordable housing in the spaces that we provide. In fact, Carter and Associates accelerated their redevelopment plans along the Hank Aaron Drive corridor when the BRT project was announced. And the parking lots and abandoned storefronts around the old Turner Field are now bustling with new student housing, restaurants, and offices. So as that development has opened and been successful, areas further south are also seeing investment as well. Goldman Sachs at the south end, the south terminus of the Summerhill BRT, they had originally invested $100 million because of their belief in what that BRT system would do. That was before a shovel went into the ground. On further reflection, they doubled that investment, so they're in for $200 million for residential development. Peoplestown will provide 250 mixed income housing units. More on connectivity. The high frequency and dedicated lanes will allow people to get to their destinations faster and more efficiently. So take the Summerhill Rapid, for example. It will connect the Southeast Atlanta neighborhoods of Summerhill, Peoplestown, downtown, including the Georgia State Capitol Complex, Fulton County Government Complex, 5 Point Station, federal offices, and Atlanta City Hall. With connections to 3 rail stations, this new line will also help the region reach existing and up-and-coming destinations, including Carver Academy, located at the route's southern terminus, the Atlanta Beltline, and the new shopping, commercial, and restaurant district along Georgia Avenue. But it has to work, right? In order for all of this connectivity to make a difference for Georgia, it has to work. Here's an example of what MARTA does with what it has. Of course, we were selected as a host city for the FIFA World Cup. You can see on the right-hand side, one of many positive media responses to the Taylor Swift concert. It says Taylor Swift took Atlanta by storm, and MARTA was ready for it. The interesting thing there is, you know, Taylor Swift's concert over that weekend carried 140,000 people. So it tripled our weekend ridership. Not only that, Janet Jackson was in town on the same night because of a shift in venues. And so within a mile of each other, these two icon rock stars are enhancing, lives, of course, bringing people in. Huge impact to the potential for a traffic, impact to the city. We're not alone. A lot of cities experience this. In Dallas, there was a 288% increase in traffic around the concert venue. And so if you're not going, well, if you are going to the concert, you're late. And if you're not going to the concert, you're angry. That's 288% in Dallas. Phoenix was a 315% increase. Atlanta, 32%. Why? Because people have come to understand that MARTA does well with what it has. So the rail network feeding into these downtown venues, people didn't have to be overly encouraged. They knew what to do. Leave the car at home, hop on the train, and get down to the venue. Enjoy yourself and get a ride back. And so that's the reputation that we're developing. And what we need is more of that. We need more high frequency, high reliability networks in this region so that we can bring benefits like those concerts bring to downtown to other regions in other areas inside of our region. So all the benefits without all the traffic congestion, because we have a solid solution here. So it brings us to automated camera enforcement and the fact that this kind of expansion really does need to work. Our bus lanes will be marked. We'll have red lanes, but they won't have protective barriers. First of all, the concept of barriers all the way down the lane is just unsightly in my opinion, but also it's expensive and it also makes it difficult for emergency vehicles to access the lanes. And we have every intention for emergency vehicles to maintain access to these lanes. So the potential for unauthorized vehicles to slow down the bus, much like that photo there, exists. And that would just take the rapid out of bus rapid transit. So whether it's a parked vehicle on the side or people just not caring about the regulations and congesting the lane, we need a method of making sure that in addition to our extensive public education campaign, we have to make sure that the lanes are taken seriously right from the beginning. So while we've discussed the draft legislation in previous sessions, I just want to reinforce that this bill simply allows a jurisdiction that has chosen to designate a transit lane to opt into camera enforcement if they so choose. MARTA doesn't control the right-of-way, and we will not receive any revenue from this. Our partner local jurisdictions will. Jurisdictions must comply with GDOT's regulations and requirements to operate a camera, even in their own right-of-way. And the fines mirror the distracted driving law, which the General Assembly and MARTA find to be fair and reasonable. We've addressed concerns about preventing title transfers by mirroring House Bill 348's language. And the RFP for a third-party vendor would be out there so that they would receive, assess, enforce, collect, distribute all of the fines at arm's length from MARTA. So we're really extending what's already started. We know in 1965, the MARTA Act opened up the legislation. We see that in 2014 and in 2016, voter referenda were key in Clayton and the city of Atlanta. We see in 2024, Cobb and Gwinnett are making decisions. So this stay in your lane legislation is really the next logical step in a journey that's bringing life to the vision. There are only 5 projects currently in the MARTA jurisdictions that are funded and slated to be constructed in the next 7 years when it comes to BRT. So that's Summerhill, Clayton South Lake, State Route 54, Clifton, and Campbellton. There are others in planning, yes, but local funding has not been secured for them. Both Cobb and Gwinnett have BRT lanes in their plans, as I've said before, and they are to be considered in 2024, but they would benefit from having the option to utilize camera enforcement as well. This legislation would allow those limited areas to enforce those lanes, making them successful and effective without using the ever important current public safety resources. So we don't want our current public safety resources tied up in policing these lanes when technology is there to help us get it done. So there's a broad list of folks that are joining the BRT Enforcement Coalition. Chair Silcox read off a few other names. A few of them are here today to speak in support. So Chair, I'm grateful for the multiple agencies and organizations that have aligned their thinking on this very important topic. And as I return the floor to you, I was ask only that we, give them a chance, let us hear them, and let us consider and support them in their bid for this legislation.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming, Collie, and just for the exciting economic benefits that I don't think people recognize, that this could really help us to continue to be the #1 business in the country, the #1 state to do business in the country by so much economic development around transit. So I really appreciate that. And without any further ado, the first person I'd like to entertain come up and speaking in favor, I'd like to introduce from the governor's office, Mr. Bob Dallas, to speak about 348 and maybe a little about BRT too.
Chairman Collins for allowing me to speak, and the rest of the members, and I would also echo many years of work that I've enjoyed with Legislative Council. Always done a great job in serving you and the citizens of Georgia. Let me just clarify one thing. I'm not with the governor's office anymore, but I was the director of the governor's office of highway safety from 2003 to 2011.
Okay.
And I have also served on a MARTA board from 2015 to 2019. I also had the pleasure of being a planning commissioner for almost 23 years in both DeKalb County and the city of Dunwoody, where I live. And I say that not to, advance my background as being better than anybody else, because I firmly believe that whomever uses our transportation systems is as much an expert as I am. We all use it. We all have our experiences, the good, the bad, and occasionally ugly aspects of it. But what I'm here to talk about is the issue of automated speed enforcement in school zones, which Chairman Collins, of course, spoke so eloquently to. And start off by saying that when we look at programs that the state of Georgia has developed over the many years, whether it's safety belt, speed in general, impaired driving, teen driving, Georgia is a leader in not just the Southeast United States, but in the country. And as I like to use to say, Georgia is second to none when it comes both to our policies as well as how we execute them and the consequences to our citizens on the positive side. So when I look at automated speed enforcement, we really have to ask ourselves, what is the goal? There's one goal, and that is to save lives, prevention. And if any of you have worked with me on highway safety, as some have over the many years, yeah, the dinosaurs, okay? What we will notice is that our prevention goal is best met by informing the public about what we're doing. In other words, we don't believe in hiding behind the billboard. We believe by telling the public what we're going to do in enforcement, why we're doing it in enforcement, and what we did afterwards is a way to get compliance. And that is the ultimate goal, whether it's impaired driving, occupant protection, excessive speed, distracted driving, is compliance. Because we know with compliance, we drive down the numbers of serious injuries and deaths in the state of Georgia, and quite frankly, throughout the country. So when it came to automated speed enforcement, what we knew is in the school zones, we have an area with some of our most vulnerable people, our kids, whether they're just starting off in elementary school, middle school, or high school. We knew that these areas were prone to a lot of negative outcomes if excessive speed occurred in front of these schools. And I will say this is irrespective of where excessive speed occurs, people are smart. They don't want to be next to a car that's driving super fast within feet of them. And so the focus was on school zones and ensuring that we could put in place an effective program that would result in people following the laws to the speeds in school zones. And with that, we had a few years ago, of course, the law that authorized automated speed enforcement. And that law was implemented over a period of time. As you well know, GDOT had to come up with regulations that the providers had to follow. The providers had to contract with both the school systems as well as the local law enforcement jurisdictions to make sure that they sign off on it. And then the systems have to be set up to make sure that any person accused of violating these laws with automated speed enforcement, that the process was 100% correct in terms of who gets notified, when they get notified, and the means by which they can appeal the decision. And so companies who went out there and did this did it differently. And as you can tell from my badge here, I do represent one of the companies. It's called Blue Line Solutions. And the company is very focused on the prevention side because the founder is a former person that worked in highway safety and was a deputy sheriff. The people who work in the company all have that kind of background. And we know that by prevention, we get the right outcomes, which is to save lives. So the way the law is supposed to work is that an hour before, an hour after, that those times, if you're exceeding the speed limit more than 10 miles an hour, then you can have a administrative fine assessed against the owner of the vehicle, basically. And the processes are in place with the notification to the accused and what they can do in terms of paying it and or if they want to appeal it. Correct that doesn't have a court date on it, but it does incorporate the idea that the accused offender is informed of what their appeal processes are or to pay it. And certainly that's a right that we expect any citizen to have. So let me specifically talk about the idea of what does a company like Blue Line do. The first thing that we do is do a speed study. And I'm going to give you an example, not just a one-day speed study is mandated by law, but a 5-day speed study, because we feel that having a week's worth of data in a school week gives you a better feel for whether there's a problem or not. And let me just say this, if there's not a problem, I do not advocate for putting these in. Let me restate that. If there's not a speeding issue, then this is really not the right solution to a non-problem. But if there's a speeding issue, these are very good solutions.
And Mr. Dallas, let me just ask, is that a requirement of the GDOT regulations to have a speed
No,
study?
today it's one day.
1 day. Okay.
5 days, we believe gives a better perception as to what's going on. And I'll say this, I mean, again, we all utilize our transportation systems and our risk tolerance will differ. Some of you may choose to ride with the traffic on your bicycle, some not so much. And the idea behind this, though, is that we want to have real data, and it's conducted during the entire time, actually 24 hours a day for that 5-day period. So we get a lot of really robust information. But this is a time in.
Let me just ask one more question.
Sure.
Sorry. And that is, if we were to have BRT for these, or excuse me, cameras for the BRT lanes, would you also recommend a study be conducted to study whether someone would violate these lanes?
That's a good question. I saw the truck parking in that line. So
Mhm.
I think the key aspect, if I heard from the CEO of MARTA, was the education component, and that the public be clearly warned of what this is and why it's being done this way, as well as the signage. I'm a big proponent of having real clear signage that says this is not for you to park, and if there is, there's consequences. As far as having studies, I would assume that when lines are put in, the jurisdictions may or may not have enforcement immediately. And if you want to do a proper study, you might have one with enforcement immediately, one without, and see which one comes out differently. But I'll suggest to you that some lines, some parts of it will probably be problematic, others will not. And so the question is, how do you do the enforcement in those areas where it's needed, or do you just do a carte blanche everywhere? Those are all fair questions. I wish I could give you the right answer to that. And I would certainly, as has already been done, I'm sure, by the MARTA team, a lot of analysis have been done from other jurisdictions who've implemented these programs to find out what the best solution is here.
Mhm.
And let's not forget, if the proposed legislation as written goes forward, you have to have concurrence by that local jurisdiction to put this in. And whether that is obtained or not, obviously will be dependent on the dynamics of that local jurisdiction.
Mhm.
As we know, elected officials represent the people that they serve, and the people that they serve have opinions about things like this, and they may be supportive or not, independent of what data and best practices might say.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think Chairman Collins said that you do have to have signs for the school cameras, right?
Yes.
You do.
And then let me point out, the signs have to indicate that there is an upcoming automated speed enforcement.
Mhm.
There is not a requirement that I'm aware of under Georgia law that during the school morning or afternoon that there's a flashing yellow. Oftentimes jurisdictions do that for the obvious reason that you want to inform the public. These are really important times, which we would agree with. But I know what Blue Line does is we incorporate a speed sign. In other words, a sign that tells you how fast you're going
Mhm.
before you get into the school zone. And I'm gonna give you some numbers in a second, and they're really astounding, the drop in speeders when you do it this way. So for example, as of May of this year, and these would be about 80 plus different jurisdictions in Georgia, during the speed study period, that 5-day period, we had 319,000 plus over 10 miles an hour speeders in these zones.
Wow.
And so then the question is, all right, what did you do next? Well, the next part of it is that for those locations that the decision was made to put these in, we would do the public information and education, and realize our law currently requires a 30-day grace period. So before the first ticket is even, or citation, or however you want to call it, but the administrative citation is issued, that 30-day period, you can't issue a real one where there's a fine. But what we do is we do the public information and education. And so from that 319,000, it'll drop to 72,000 in a 5-day period, just with the information alone. And then when we incorporate the 30-day warning period, it'll drop to 40,000. And then when we do the enforcement, it'll drop to 22,000. And then when we do the, after that, over a period of time, it'll drop down to 18,000. In other words, a 94% reduction in excessive speeders.
Wow.
With warning, with engaging the administrators of the schools, the local jurisdictions, law enforcement, as well as the PTAs, just getting the information out there that we want compliance in these zones. So we're getting a 94% reduction in excessive in speeds over 10 miles an hour in these zones when it's done this way. And that is so important to those of us who believe that the first and foremost, if not the only goal, is getting compliance to make these zones safer. So the whole idea of doing it a correct way It's really modeled after the high visibility enforcement that National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has followed over the years, as well as most of the country's highway safety offices, including Georgia's. And that is, tell the public what you're doing, why you're doing it, before you do it, heck, even while you're doing it and after you do it, because the goal is compliance. So these numbers really produce outstanding results that we believe, when done properly, is really going to increase the safety of an area. Getting to a point I made earlier, which is this: people are smart. They don't want their kids or themselves in areas where people are speeding excessively. So it kind of takes away from that community. We don't have walkers. We have everybody driving in line. By the way, I have 5 boys. Right there, preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school. And I know what it's like to stand in a long line of cars and just wait for nothing, it seems. But, the idea that we can switch some of that, but make it more of a community, where people engage themselves, I think is really important. And so let me just address a couple great points that were brought up by Chairman Collins, and that is, the time of operation is very important. I understand the center component that sometimes, people don't know that they're speeding at that time, or they choose to ignore it or think it's not being enforced then. But activity occurs in schools throughout the day, not just in the morning and the afternoon when they're coming and going, but throughout the day, especially as you get more into high school, when kids have all kinds of alternative schedules, as well as the sports and things that are going on. But, the idea is that the school is a community place, so people come and go throughout the day. And let me just say this: there is no excuse for having any kind of enforcement after the hours. So if this is happening at 1 a.m. or 10 at night, or, pick a time, a weekend, day off from school, there should not be citations issued. And that's a very important point. But we believe that in between hours, safety matters then. It's a culture that we're trying to address. If you haven't watched TV for a second and see a car ad, we have a speed culture in this country. I mean, as you know, we all want to be like a NASCAR driver, but the reality is speed has a consequence when it's done on our public systems. The warning light, as I mentioned to you, I think is an important aspect of these things. But if it's only when it's flashing, when you reduce the speed before the hour in the morning and the afternoon, then the issue becomes, well, you don't want it flashing during the middle day because you're not reducing the speed. It goes back to the normal speed, but you don't want them speeding in excess of that. So from our perspective, having really clear static signage that says when it's flashing, obviously, but it's also being enforced during the in-between times. On the court date, I understand that. And, if there needs to be clarity in terms of what's in the information provided to the accused offender, that should happen. Whether a court date being included with that is feasible when you have an automated system, that creates a lot of technical issues, but making it really, really clear to the accused that there is a process to challenge this, and a simple going online or phone call, the way to make it clear that they have that opportunity to appeal should they so choose to. And let me just kind of finish with this: the administrative fees. When I read the statute, it's very clear what is allowed to be charged, nothing more. I'm a lawyer. I understand that you have 2 lawyers, you have 3 opinions, but having said that, the idea that if that needs to be clarified, it should be, because we don't want, whether it's one provider or the other, one jurisdiction or the other, for citizens to feel like they have disparate ways of this thing being done out of fairness to everybody. So things like that, I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I will note, there are technical questions that have to be addressed that was presented in the cleanup in years prior, and that is the definition of a school zone, where it's located. Because the way that the code defines it is it has to be within 1,000 feet of a school. However, I will submit to you, many of the school zones that are out there that have nothing to do with automated speed enforcement are more than 1,000 feet from the school, yet people still treat those as school zones that the regular law enforcement can enforce. And then there's a couple of technical issues as to schools that are near boundaries of either jurisdictions of county or municipalities that make it technically impossible to be able to put these in the location that actually may need it. So there's some cleanup things that really do need to happen from that perspective that weren't anticipated when the first legislation went out. But I think we're all familiar with that. But I think in all, the opportunity to make this work well for the citizens of Georgia, to make it transparent to the citizens of Georgia, equal in terms of different jurisdictions in the citizens of Georgia, as well as the number one goal, which is prevention. And, it's all about that. And you know better than I do when a constituent calls and, expresses to you concerns about one of their loved ones either getting killed or hurt due to some kind of traffic incident. And it runs a gamut. I get that. But I have never seen in my too many years of being involved, as you know, I have a passion for highway safety. I have not seen any tool when used properly that has these kinds of results. Reducing excessive speeds by 94%. Nothing we do elsewhere is as effective as that. If it were, many of us could be doing something else. But we're focused on this because it really does deal with our most vulnerable and important asset, and that's our kids, the administrators, the crossing guards, and the parents who use our schools as community places. So thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to present to you today. And certainly we'll always look forward to working with each of you, all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Dallas. I think we have a question. Representative Montaghan.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I had a quick question for you. I understand these are two kind of different issues here, the VRT and the speed cameras. I just want to understand, I know you said you've got two lawyers, three opinions. I've got at least one legislator with zero idea what that actually means in terms of what's real dollars. So if you were to put this thing into place, this bill's passed, what does a typical fine look like, and how much, what's y'all's take, and what's the municipalities' takes or local jurisdictions' take?
I believe that, and I don't have the code in front of me, I believe the first offense is $75, and the second one goes up to, is it $120 or something like that? But the providers are able to charge an administrative fee, which I believe is allowed to be $25 to process that citation. And I know that there is question as to whether additional fees can be charged. And my view is that the statute says it should be $25, if that's the correct number. That's it. Stop. Others look at it and say, well, it doesn't say we can't have another fee. And my view is that just needs to be clarified so that we are sure that whatever that administrative fee is allowed, that it is that fee, not something different.
Are you happy with the $25 fee? I mean, is that what your
Well, the way it's
company's happy
currently,
with?
the number that is currently in the code now, the companies find that very fair. And I think the jurisdictions, I mean, yes, the short answer is yes, the way it is currently, but it just needs to be clarified that whatever that fee is, that's the fee, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Representative Mathiak, I believe. Did you have a question? 22.
Thank you, Lady Chair. Mr. Dallas, you have educated me well today. I appreciate it so
Thank you.
much. My question still is about signage, because in my district, I have a issue. And when I drove through near an elementary school, I actually had to stop and look at the signs because I thought, what's the speed limit? Is it 25 or 35? What time? I think it's uniform throughout the state as far as 7:30 in the morning, or I mean, it's pretty close throughout the districts as far as time goes, but the speed limit was insane. I still, I haven't called my sheriff yet to find out which is it, 25 or 35. So can you help me understand some of that?
The way the Georgia code, as well as GDOT's interpretation of it, says you have a speed limit for a stretch of road.
Yes.
Put in a school zone, you can lower that speed limit by 10 miles an hour during the flashing hours, the morning and the afternoon.
Right.
So it goes back up to the higher speed during the in-between hours. So it's still a school zone during the in-between hours, but it's a higher speed than the morning and afternoon.
Okay,
As
that
to-
makes sense.
It's the time. Let me address time. It would be nice if they were all exactly the same, but I know we have at least 3 different things called elementary, middle, and high school that have different start times and end times to begin with. And between jurisdictions, not everybody's uniform with that. So as we know, many jurisdictions in a state with 169 counties have a lot of different ways that they want to, make their roads safe. And so the times all differ. And so how do you inform a motorist of what the right speed limit is and what the right times are to reduce your speed from the regular time? For those who believe in the prevention model, it's incumbent on us to ensure that we have that information provided to the driver at that location. And there are means by which to do that with signage that they can be read so that the driver understands that this is a school zone, things have changed, and you need to be mindful of that at these times. So yes, what's the speed limit? When is it reduced? And is the enforcement going on the hour before, an hour after, and in between?
Right.
And I would add to that, I'm going to let you know as a driver what your speed is coming into here with that sign that tells you, here's how fast you are going. Our view is this: if you choose to then violate the law, there are probably words that describe that I'm not going to say here today.
Consequences.
But it's all about information. And, if you have a prevention model, then these are the things that you do. You don't stand behind a billboard.
Madam Chair, can I ask one?
Of
more?
course.
Thank you. And I noticed too that more and more communities have education complexes where there is elementary, middle, and
right.
high school within a complex. So that makes it a little different. The other thing that you mentioned was automation for off days and holidays. Is that computed into? Okay.
Yeah. So the work required by any company that is involved with this is pretty extensive. The back office operations are very complicated. One of which is at every single location, we need to know what the hours are. We need to know the days that they're on and the days that they're off. And if they happen to have a day, for whatever reason, an event occurs that there is no school that day, a snow day or whatever day that might be, that it was previously scheduled and now it's not scheduled. So there's a lot of work to ensure that the motorist does not receive a citation outside the time or on the wrong day. That's important because, once again, the confidence in the system means that it's being done properly. So a whole lot of detail, a whole lot of work. And, that goes with the territory.
Great. Thank you. I
welcome.
appreciate that.
Thank you. So we have another question from Representative Gloria Frazier, who's online.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Very good information this morning. Thank you for including us. I'm from the House side of Public Safety. So, Mr. Dallas, I just have two quick questions for you about signage also. And I just want to talk about the BRT. In reference to the many thousands of visitors that we have here especially in the Atlanta area, will there be like a permanent marquee signage or something up just to educate them quickly so that we won't be giving a whole lot of tickets out to folks that are just visiting because they are just miseducated about being in the wrong lanes at the wrong time? And also, who will distribute these tickets? Are they going to be used the same as the buses with cameras? Or are we going to be utilizing our police force to do this?
So
And I'm going to let CEO
Yeah.
Kelly Greenwood answer you, Representative Frazier. He is at the mic.
Okay.
Thank you. That's coming through. Thank you for the question. In terms of recognition, lane marking recognition, yes, it's MARTA's intention to have consistent markings along the roadway. So as you're driving, you'll see in red lanes, red paint on the laneway. You'll have words like bus only, and occasional signage just to make sure that it's clear to folks if they've never seen a lane that's dedicated for premium service before. It'll be clear in this case that they're not supposed to be there. And the second part of the question,
who is going to issue the tickets, I
Right.
believe was her second.
So that was, again, that would be, the jurisdictions would engage third-party organizations that would administer everything about the ticketing. So, you know, they would have recognized law enforcement reviewing the ticket, reviewing the circumstances, issuing the fine, collecting the fine. That would not be a MARTA activity. It would be a third party submitting an RFP through the jurisdiction, working at arm's length that way.
Thank you.
And if I add on the on adjudicative part, at least for automated speed enforcement in school zones, if you submit an affidavit or show up at a hearing and say that was not me driving the car, it'll be dismissed. Now, if you do it 10 times, perhaps there might be some questions as to whether that's true or not, or you're letting somebody who does it know, and so who is that person? But that's the way the process works to get today.
It goes to the owner.
So the adjudicate side of this and give the opportunity for an accused to be heard, I think is key to ensure that people think it's fair.
Mhm. Right. But the only way we have, obviously, to identify these people consistently is with the tag.
No, we have,
And
that's correct.
so
We don't,
so we send the ticket to the owner of
Correct.
the vehicle. If somebody
Right.
else is driving the vehicle and they get the ticket, then it's going to be up to the owner to say, you got to pay this.
right. So I think over the years, and it's come up with a whole lot of areas. I mean,
Mhm.
the policy of our state is generally, we're not here to take a picture of your face.
Mhm.
We're just gonna look at the tag. What's the tag tell us?
Right.
And then we'll follow the lead from there.
Right. And this is used throughout a lot of other technologies. It's used on our highways for CERTA
Correct.
to enforce the lanes, our peach pass lanes and high occupancy vehicle lanes.
Right.
So it's always the tag that's used to identify the vehicle, correct?
It is. It
Okay,
is the
great.
tag.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your
You're welcome.
testimony. I really appreciate it. And we're going to move on to, I think, I'm sorry, we have one more question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sure.
I had
Representative.
one question on the, you said if you just show up and testify that you didn't do it, the ticket gets dismissed. Do
Yeah.
you have to provide who's driving the car or just say, I didn't do it and it's gone?
I'm not sure the exact language the judge would accept, but as I recollect, the way the code reads is if you go there and you swear or do an affidavit that was not you that drove the car, the owner of the car,
Mhm.
because the owner of the car is going to get the citation. Then in that instance, the process is to be dismissed.
So like you said, you could just go and say you 10 times in a row, but there's really no way to prove that they're lying because you're only taking a photo of the tag.
Well, I'm not a judge, but I have been before a lot of judges, and they do a pretty good job, I think, of distinguishing whether you're telling the truth or not. And after the 10th time, my guess is that they hear you, but they don't believe you. And this happens in other areas. For example, our distracted driving law, if for the first offense, you go in there and say, look, I purchased earbuds or a hands-free methodology, that citation will be dismissed
Mhm.
just by your going in there and saying that. Now, again, if you go to multiple jurisdictions and say the same thing over and over again, or if you go to the same one twice, somewhere along the line, somebody may not believe you.
But as the law is written, all you have to do, that is your defense is saying it.
I have to confirm that for you, Representative, to make sure that that's exactly correct. But I can't say off the top of my head. I have to look at that. But I think the idea, as I recollect, the idea behind it is that you get to testify either through an affidavit or in person that it was not you, somebody else was using the car, like a teenage son. By the way, who has sons have gotten these, that this has happened, that it wasn't you. And so then that should be tossed out.
Well, that's the point I'm trying, like
How
what I'm
many
trying to
times?
understand is, like you said, your teenage son drives a vehicle and they get 10 tickets. Well, you're honestly telling the truth and there's no way to hold those people who are accountable. And the
Right.
moment the judge now holds the parent accountable and the parent's like, I didn't do it, that's going to cause a problem here on you're penalizing people who aren't driving the car.
No, it could. And again, I think when I've read it in the past, the answer is each time you go in, you can swear to that was not you driving, and that assume that you're believed, then the process is that would be dismissed.
All right. Thank you.
Now, whether you're believed or not is a separate question.
Thank you.
And I just have to ask our legislative council, is that
Yeah, you
addressed
may
at
have
all?
an answer, Jenna.
Say you testify under oath in open report or submit to the court for notarized statement that he or she is not the operator of the vehicle at the time of the alleged violation, that's A. And then B says presents to the court a certified copy of a police report showing that the vehicle had been reported to the police as stolen prior to the time of the alleged violation. Missing an and or or.
Yeah,
The
so-
law is missing an and or so. Whether it's an and, you have to show that it was stolen. A stolen vehicle report was also, if it's an or, the judge can just say, oh, you want to.
Yeah.
All right,
So
thank you.
when I
So-
read that,
Yeah.
I concluded you could be a multiple person. I don't know if you read it that way too, but
The and or is a big deal.
it is. It is. Once again, we lawyers try to be very clear in our writing of statutes. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Dallas. I appreciate you coming today.
Thank
We're going to move on to some public comments. We have Assistant to Mayor Dickens, Kenyatta Mitchell with the City of Atlanta here. So thank you for coming.
And thank you for that promotion. I'm actually the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for the Mayor's Office, City of Atlanta. So again, thank you all for having me. I'm going to be extremely short in this, but I wanted to say the City of Atlanta wholeheartedly supports both bills that MARTA has presented, both the BRT dedicated lane as well as the camera enforcement. You know that cities across the country and across the state have issues with ensuring we have enough public safety personnel. We want to make sure that those personnel are out on the street doing their job and not doing enforcement of people that we know are going to take liberties with the dedicated lane, right? And we also are very supportive of having a dedicated lane that is identified and marked. But as the CEO said, we don't want to have permanent barriers for a lot of reasons, emergency personnel being just one of them. So we wanted to make sure that that was known. To tell you how much we support it as part of our legislative agenda, it's very rare that the City of Atlanta places on its legislative agenda things that are not directly in our purview. That is a partnership with us and MARTA. Obviously, ATL DOT, which is our transportation department, would be working hand in hand with MARTA on that. But we feel so strongly this is important that we added this to the precious real estate that is our legislative agenda. I also wanted to say that, the City of Atlanta, as you all know, when you come here every year, is growing faster and faster and denser and denser. The only way for us to accommodate that growth is the expansion of BRT and ART. So I will stop there and see if y'all have any questions.
Any questions? Well, I'm excited that we have the World Cup coming. And I know that the City of Atlanta has a lot of preparations to do, and this is just a piece of that. Very excited also for the U.S. Soccer Federation to move their headquarters here. So I do think we have a lot of people coming, and we got to move them around safely and economically. Not to mention that, this is going to cut down on the amount of emissions, with using these electric buses that do not emit any fumes that would continue to pollute our air. So thank you so much for
Absolutely. Thank
coming.
you.
I appreciate it. We also have, I don't want to mess up your name. Is it Neil? Neil Herring? Mr. Herring?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Neil Herring. I'm a lobbyist for the Georgia chapter of the Sierra Club, and we endorse the bill that MARTA is proposing. I would like to say that we have observed the school zone stuff, and we have listened with great interest to law enforcement objections to abuse of the revenue aspects of that. The hours stuff and all is a welcome reform as far as we're concerned, because if you start sending tickets from pictures of license plates and with no restrictions on the limits, the abuse is going to lead to more abuse by the motorists. People are going to be contemptuous of it. And that's a terrible way to conduct any regulation of society on public roads. So the other bill is very welcome to us as well. In the case of the MARTA lanes, the person driving in a school zone is driving past a school on a regular road. Somebody that goes into a red lane is plainly committing an offense. There's no surprise to that aspect of it. But the other personal anecdote I'd like to contribute is I live in Atlanta and I walk a great deal in Midtown, and I drive some. I don't really like driving, but I've noticed over the last year, more and more people are feeling free to stop in moving lanes and go into stores. Sometimes they turn their flashers on. Sometimes they don't even bother with that. And I've been caught repeatedly waiting for somebody to come out of the delicatessen. And this is the problem of people blocking lanes is not theoretical in my experience. And so I did want to point that out. The other thing that I wanted, personal anecdote, my grandson and I ride MARTA a lot. He's 4 years old, and he regards it as an adventure. It's a high entertainment. We've been to every train line. We've ridden the streetcar repeatedly, and we're working our way through the bus routes. There's a lot of them, but we were talking about, or I was talking to him about the BRT, and it was like, well, what are we going to do when we get to the end? And I saw a paper in the paper the other day. A developer is actually already developing a destination at the end of the bus rapid transit Summerhill line, the one that starts here. They're going to have restaurants and all kinds of stuff, entertainment for 4-year-olds and legislators who are not dissimilar. And so I just wanted to point out is even without the service, we're getting the impacts.
Yeah, it
So
was
this
really,
is very welcome to our organization. We want more mobility and fewer cars.
thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your comments. I really appreciate it. Yeah. If you haven't had a chance, I know I went down to the Georgia State Convocation Center for the inauguration of the governor last year, and it was really neat to see the start of all that building. And then when we came back for the actual dedication and opening of the BRT at Summerhill, to see the progress and the amount of development that had happened just in that short period of time, 6 months. Was
I welcome your
amazing.
enthusiasm. I think this is a
So-
great indication. This is, MARTA, they've talked about transit-oriented development ever since they started MARTA.
Mhm.
And it's been an extremely slow process because everybody knows where the stations are, the train stations. It took years to get them there. The property was nailed down by whoever, whenever. But this is new.
This is new, and the
Yeah.
great thing is
Yeah,
probably
this
great.
is opportunity.
Yeah, it really
This
is.
great.
And it can be flexible, and it can be economical, and it
Yes,
will
ma'am.
pollute less, all those things. So
Thank you.
thank you so much. Are there any other comments or questions? Oh, yes, Mayor Representative Oliver. There we go.
Back to this question of and or, may I assume that the legislative idea in the beginning was it to be an or?
I'm not sure.
I just, Mr. Chair, I think we ought to think about resolving that question.
Strikes that you have to either submit as a police report, it just says that you testify. So I think that's all those versions that I've seen.
I just think that needs to be fixed. Secondly, Chair, or anybody else that has an opinion, I'm interested in this possible gap or arguable gap on the issue of the fines or the fees. Because I have seen creative activity in relation to private vendors on the municipal probation issues about addition of fees. And it's a little complicated when you get into the county and city management of that. And I wonder if there's a mood to clarify or fix that. I suggest there might be a need for it.
Of course. Chairman Collins. Oops, sorry.
My good friend from up in northeast Georgia, Representative Ridley, and I are not this Ridley, but the other Ridley, Northwest Georgia, I'm sorry, have had some ideas and some conversation about, tightening that down, because, you talk about a processing fee or a surcharge, they get creative with their adjectives and verbs, and they create these loopholes, and we want to shut that down and keep that.
Be happy to help.
Thank you. And I also would like to say here at 11:15 on October 17th, I never thought I would agree with the Sierra Club, but you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen here.
About water.
Yeah.
What is it? Politics
So-
makes strange
Hey,
bedfellows,
you
right?
Never know. I always talk about my public safety meetings are like the Love Boat. There's always something exciting and new at every meeting. So this is no exception.
And I think number 25, is that Representative Montana again?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still just trying to get some clarification on where we are right now. So I understand that we are looking at cameras for speed zones only for schools. Is that correct? Is this
We're-
just for school zones and BRT lanes, or is this just speed cameras just in general?
No, we're looking at cameras for speed zones for schools that we already have in place, but we want to refine and make some improvements on that bill. And then we are also looking at proposed cameras for BRT lanes, so that we can enforce those lanes and the BRT will work and we'll get people around efficiently for the World Cup.
I do have some questions, if I may,
Sure.
and I don't know who I need to pose these questions to, and that is, these would use existing roadways or right of ways. Is that correct? In the
We would
city of
use
Atlanta?
existing roadways, and I'll let, again, CEO Collie Greenwood address that.
Sure. So in most cases, it's existing roadways, existing right of ways. The legislation would apply, for future build outs. So if we end up creating our own right of way, in some cases, it would still apply to that as well.
Do you think that, I'll back up, maybe ask a few more questions if I may, Madam Chair. I'm just
Sure.
trying to get to the bottom of it, trying to understand it from maybe a Pawnee County constituent perspective, because I've got a lot of folks that work in Atlanta and Metro, and I want to understand it from their perspective. So how many people, what is your ridership right now? What's the, as far as the, percentage of buses that are riding at full capacity right now
Yeah.
at a slow rate?
So pre-COVID, we were around 500,000 annual riders. When COVID happened, we dropped to about 250,000 riders, and that we've been steadily coming back up. So that was the 50% mark. We're coming back up to around 68, 70% now on the buses. So that's, distributed through about 110 bus routes. And rail, of course. So generally speaking, our buses will feed into the rail system. So if you're going to be a rail rider, then there's a good chance that you're transferring onto the bus route. So that's today's density. What we're saying is, regardless of how many people are on the bus, we recognize that more people will use it if it's effective. And what we're hearing from our constituents, from our riders, is that it doesn't go where they want it to go. It doesn't go far enough, and it takes too long to get there. And if those two things were improved, then we'd have a lot more ridership. We're not alone in that. We see that across the country with the American Public Transit Association. Those agencies that have adopted bus rapid transit have talked about a significant increase in ridership. It's actually more effective for more people that are currently in their cars and would otherwise take transit.
As part of this, I guess I'm trying to get to an idea of how will these lanes be managed by time or no? So for example, will they be certain times of the day, only during rush hour, or this is 24/7, this is a BRT lane?
Yeah, this is a designated BRT lane, not unlike, if you're to jump on a Peach Pass lane at any point in time, if you're authorized to be there, that's one thing. And if you're not, you're not. So it becomes rather binary, rather easy to enforce and understand from people. The buses are running, maybe not 24/7 in some cases, but at least up till 2:00 in the morning. We start again at 5 in the morning. So yeah, if it's a dedicated right of way, then it's dedicated for buses.
Okay.
But they would do exceptions for emergency vehicles.
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to see, and maybe we were talking with, I think Senator Ginn had this question at the last meeting, and that was, I'm failing to see how moving a small amount of buses in a lane versus a continual flow of traffic, how that would increase. I'm no engineer by any stretch of the imagination, but just looking at it from a common perspective, I don't see how that reduces right, traffic flow. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
I'm focused on the merchant side of the business, right? Of
Yeah,
people trying to get to their destination.
I get it. I think, you know, when I think about it, holistically, I think, you know, if you have 3 lanes of traffic right now and things are jammed up, adding a 4th lane doesn't free it up. It's just the way traffic flows. People use that 4th lane and things become just as congested on a 3-lane highway as they are on a 4-lane highway. And then I start thinking about like a single lane road where people are just, you're behind the person in front of you, you're going at a regulated speed and you're moving. And you don't have someone in front of you that's stopping and pulling over and stopping to let people on and let people off, disrupting the flow of traffic. And so what a BRT does is it takes a vehicle that is often stopping and starting, moves it really out of the way, and also attracts a lot of folks that are in the cars that are congesting the lane that you're in, attracts them out and into the BRT. So that's the holistic premise that I get to behind it is adding another lane of traffic. And let's not just think about the people that are here now. Let's think about the fact that Georgia is growing rapidly. There's a lot of folks coming here. And if we don't sort this out now, then the existing lanes for all POVs are going to be a lot more congested than they are today. So we really have to build a solution and then attract more people to it. And that's the way to get this to work.
So I think what he's trying to say, Representative, is he's trying to get people to get out of their cars, particularly for short trips around downtown, for example, get people out of their cars. If they know they can get onto the bus and get to that lane, to that next destination faster, because there is a designated lane that's clear, then they can get around faster taking the bus than if they get in a car.
Sure. Well, thank you. Look, and I'll just posit for the committee. I'm going to be, I think, just for the purpose of our discussion here, Madam Chair, if I may, and it's not online, I just haven't seen, in my experience, very successful public transportation in the state of Georgia, specifically in Atlanta. And so I'm pretty skeptical that, you know, taking up an entire lane of traffic that is currently existing and going from 3 to 2 in some cases, or 2 or less in some other cases, presumably is going to be an effective way to, you know, manage traffic or get people around. I think it's going to be a mess. And then when we think about, you know, I guess some of these offenses that are being, you know, given to folks, whether it's civil or criminal. I mean, right now, Atlanta's in the news for being fairly lawless, and a lot of lawlessness going around. So imposing new laws in places where they don't get enforced is also kind of interesting to me. But those would be my comments for now. I hope maybe we can get some more information, and I'm willing to learn and keep my eyes open.
Well, and speaking of security, I do have to mention the chief of MARTOC is here, and Mr. Greenwood, you could share the award that they recently received.
Yeah, thank you. It's a gold award from the National Public Transit Association. They recognize the good work that the MARTA police have been doing. And so to stand there and receive gold amongst your peers in the nation, that was really strong. That includes their bike patrols of the Lindbergh Station area and all the other work that they've been doing in association with Atlanta Police Department. They've seen a 17% reduction in Part 1 crimes or serious crimes over the last 2 years. They've seen a 40-odd% reduction in operator assaults. So, you know, we're building the ship together. It's my opinion that if we do nothing, things don't get better. If we try to organize the flow of traffic in this way, in a way that's been successful throughout the country, then I think we're getting somewhere.
Well, thank you. Congratulations on that, for sure.
So let's see, Representative. There we go.
Yes, I had a question on the automated enforcement on the BRTs. I'm not one of the MARTOC people. I'm one of the public safety people, so I'm sorry, I'm not a MARTA expert. But with the BRTs, like one of the things I was always taught, like if you're in an accident or your car breaks down, you pull to the side of the road. So if you have automated cameras that are hitting tags, if you're in an accident and you pull over, it sounds like they're going to get a ticket first, and then they're going to have to go back and say, "Hey, I was in an accident."
Well, that's a great logistical question. The bottom line is, it's my expectation that you will not be charged with that ticket, and that's the beauty of BRT and not rail. we'll just go around it. And we understand that some things happen. You're not doing that. You're not doing that because you think it's a great idea. You're just getting out of the flow of traffic. So, the mechanics of how you actually address that may be something to be discussed, but no one's coming to your door. You'll get a ticket in the mail and then you will have your explanation. And I assume that that's the quickest way to get out of it.
All right, thank you.
And let's see, who's 19? Okay, Representative Crowe.
Thank you. Just kind of to follow up on Representative Montahan's point. So the plan, at least for the Summerhill route, there's no more room to build any more lanes. So we're going to take the existing lanes that are on that route now and take one of those out of service just for the BRT.
Yeah, I think there's a lane geometry. I'm not sure if planning's here. There's a lane geometry issue. In some cases, some of our routes will be, there's a median strip going down there, so there's no one driving along that now. So that's fair game for turning that into a lane. But in some cases, depending on how much space is available, yeah, it will be an organization of the existing lanes. So in short, yes, in some cases, to your question.
Okay. And would it be just one lane, a bi-directional lane, or is it going to be one lane going south and one lane going north?
One in each direction.
Okay. And this is a little farther off, but I know there's planned routes down to South Lake,
Right.
Mall area and I come through Henry County and Clayton County on my way up here all the time. So are those going to be surface streets only? I know I'd seen in the past there was talk about having some BRT lanes on the interstate as well. And if that's the case, are those going to be dedicated lanes, and where are they going to go? Are they going to utilize the Peach Pass lanes in some areas, or?
Right. So various projects, various solutions. We are working through a number of scenarios for locally preferred alternatives in the SR 54 route. In some cases, we're even talking about a flyover connection into the airport. So, an elevated guideway. In some cases, it's use of median or use of existing lanes. When you come up north along the Georgia 400, again, these are not fully baked. These are things we're talking about, but we're talking about the idea of using the premium lanes and sharing the premium lanes with existing POVs.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have some online questions. Representative Demetrius Douglas.
Hello, Madam Chair. Can everybody hear me?
Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Good.
We're good. We're good. We can hear you.
Okay. I thought you guys put me on mute. Okay, here we go. First of all, Madam Chair, thank you, and my colleagues, friends, our CEO, MARTA, thank you all for presenting. I just want to shine a light on what we've been talking about. It's kind of interesting to hear all of these questions coming from guys that doesn't live in the metro area. It doesn't affect them on a daily basis. They're basically down to the capital probably about 4 months out of the year, downtown. So it really doesn't affect their daily lives. And it's only in places where MARTA wants to go. And I've seen it was like 5 different locations and everybody's on board. So it's kind of strange to hear all those questions from my colleagues that people live outside of 285 in those country areas that don't really come into the city to do anything but work. But that's neither here nor there. It's a great thing. I don't know if you guys have ever been downtown to just drive through. Do you see it's 10 new high rises coming downtown alone? Do you imagine how many people that will bring in the metro area? And so just the logistics of that alone, we're trying with all the EV that we have in our state, that our governor has worked so hard to bring to our state, with all the EV vehicles, getting vehicles off the road and the emissions, getting cleaner. We're just trying to get cars off the road in the metro areas. And also, what else did I have to say? I have a little list here. I don't want to overcook you guys' grits, but I just want to say a few things about this because I'm very passionate about it, because I'm in this area a lot and I'm downtown a lot. And the future, people can't see the future if they don't have vision. And so sometimes it takes people a little bit longer to get on board. But if you just come down and see and take advantage of these things, it makes our state a growing state, along with the population where people can get around and get the jobs. And let's see, I don't want to ramble here, but I think it's a great idea. We're all for it in Clayton County because we have put so many people down in this area with no means of transportation. A lot of these people down in Clayton County came from the city of Atlanta where there was a bus line. Now we had a bus line. Now they can get out and make a decent living for themselves and not have to worry about transportation, because that is a big expense in the household when you're trying to pay bills and keep the lights on for the people that are less fortunate or just trying to get a great daily life. So to me, it's a way of life to see into the future. I've actually gone to Indianapolis and seen this firsthand. I rode the BRT in Indianapolis. It was a great experience. Like you said, with Summerhill, with the businesses coming and people investing in communities that were left behind, it makes our whole city grow, our whole state grow. Another thing, I've been doing some research here lately. We're not number one of doing business anymore. We're number 4. So this possibly could help us get back to number 1 with this BRT line coming on board. But that's about it, guys. I'm gonna leave it right there. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to speak. And I hope you have a change of heart. If not, come see me during session. I'm quite sure we can work something out. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Douglas. Go Dogs.
Yes, ma'am. Twice on Sunday.
There we go. And we also have Sherry Williams from the City of Atlanta online has a question.
Thank you. Actually, I'm a public policy and civic engagement consultant. Thank you for taking my question and comment. And I want to thank you for such an informative meeting. And I also want to thank the City of Atlanta for their unwavering support in their effort to help move the traffic flow here in our ever increasing city. I agree with Representative Douglas about the need for the dedicated bus lanes. I applaud Representative Mary Margaret for her support of making sure that we get the logistics right in the ticketing so that we'll make sure that people are not taken advantage of. I want to say that larger cities understand the need for dedicated lanes. And being an Atlanta native and riding the bus as often as I can, I don't understand why more people don't. Clean air is so important. What good is it if you're sitting in your car breathing in all of these exhaust, and you have a poor quality of life? I believe that as the Atlanta and Georgia population increases, having bus rapid transit in their dedicated lanes, it will decrease exhaust, improve our health. It will also improve our safety. The less people in cars, the less accidents there will be. The more people will arrive home safely to their families. The less accidents there are, the lower our car insurance premiums will be for those of us that still choose to own cars. Then it will improve our overall health, because we have to walk from the BRT to our destination, typically a half a block or so. I rode the BRT in LA. I saw how frustrating it was at intervals where they did not have a dedicated lane. A bus being stuck in traffic is not efficient or effective. When people with vision come together, like the MARTOC vote that you have and MARTA and the City of Atlanta, it's a win-win for everybody. Long-term residents, short-term residents, and those who are yet to call Atlanta, Metro Atlanta and Georgia their home. My challenge to this committee and to those that support MARTA is in rapid transit and moving people around effectively and efficiently is this. Think like you have never thought before. Get on a bus, get on a train, and see what it's all about. Until you experience it yourself, you might not understand it. And for those of us who don't have a Breeze, those who do not have a Breeze card, I encourage you to get one or get on Greta so that you can see it from other people's perspective. Thank you so much.
Ms. Williams, I couldn't have put it better myself. Thank you very much. I appreciate your remarks. Are there any other comments? Any other public comments? Yes, ma'am. Of course. Sorry that you're injured.
Good morning. I'm Gretchen Walton. I am with the Cobb County School District, and we didn't talk about two specific lines in 348 that we just want to bring to your attention, which are lines 130 and 131. We would ask that they remain as they currently are and not be changed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am.
Also did not find out for comments.
Oh, that's okay. You're here. We appreciate you coming.
Notes on my phone while I was sitting there, and I'm going to be a bit redundant, so I'm going to be brief. I'm Valencia Williamson. I'm President and CEO of Clayton County Chamber of Commerce, but I'm also a MARTA Board of Directors member and representing Clayton County. And I appreciated Representative Douglas's comments. And of course, Senator Gail Davenport, who is here also representing our communities. I will say that on behalf of Clayton County Chamber's leadership and our 600 plus members of our business community, we are also in favor of this proposed legislation. We do believe that BRT is the right fit for our communities in terms of moving our residents faster and obviously more efficiently. We also are committed to driving the power of business and finding solutions to our employers' greatest challenges. And we think that this legislation will address some of our needs in terms of additional economic development projects, workforce solutions, such as Representative Davis mentioned, and also, you know, just having an opportunity for better mobility in our community. I mean, I think it's so very important that we create opportunities for our students and our residents and employers alike, so that not only can we create a workforce that's viable, but we can also be more sustainable. And I think you've got to have some enforcement in order to do that. So we certainly support what MARTA is doing here and get behind them 100%. Again, we just believe that the legislation allows our jurisdictions to enforce the lanes. And I do want to make mention without draining the resources of our local law enforcement agencies. That's very important to us as well. So again, thank you for the opportunity. Glad to be here today and look forward to more dialogue related to this. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If there are no other public comments, then I suppose we are adjourned. Thank you so much.